Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Good evening, honorable members of council, Mayor's Chief of Staff, Tanny Washington, City Council Chief of Staff, Daniel Walker, department heads, and members of the public. We are here this evening for the Finance Department's budget hearing presentation. I'd like to first by recognizing members of the Finance Committee in attendance. First off, start with Vice Chair Michelle Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Xanthia Oliver, 3rd District. Council Member Nathan Field, 8th District. At-large Councilmember Spadola.
Here.
At-large Councilmember Walsh. Council President Congo. Also then would like to turn it to other council persons in attendance by doing roll call. 1st District Councilmember Gray.
Present.
2nd District Councilmember Darby.
Present.
5th District Councilmember Fields.
Present.
6th District Councilmember McCoy. At-large Councilmember Cabrera.
Present.
And at-large Councilmember Dixon.
Present.
And last call for Councilmember Oliver. Councilmember Field. Councilmember Walsh.
Field is present.
Oh, Field, okay, Field's present. Walsh,
Here.
okay, and President Congo. All right.
Here.
All right. I also would like to recognize in attendance, we have Office of Management and Budget Director Robert Greco. We have George Hayford, also from the OMB office. We have Finance Director Brett Taylor, Ms. Tamika Leveridge, who's the Deputy Finance Director. And we also have Lois McLaughlin, also from Finance Department. With me in council offices is Strategy Director, Ms. Marshall Bassnight. And we do have some other panelists present as well, and members of the public. Before I turn it over to Mr. Hayford for a budget overview summary of Finance Department, I would like to first inform everyone that public comments will be asked at the end of each department's budget hearing, and we look forward to participation from the public. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes. If there is any follow-up information during the budget hearings, Ms. Marshall Bassnight will track and follow up on these requests. I ask that if my colleagues have any questions, please use the raise hand feature. And now, Mr. Hayford, I will now turn it over to you for the financial overview of the Finance Department's fiscal year 22 proposed budget, then followed by a brief intro by Mr. Opening statement by Mr. Director Brett Taylor, and then a question and answer session from council. Okay, Mr. Hayford, the floor is yours. You're on mute, sir. Can somebody message him?
George, you're on mute.
You on mute? I don't have his cell phone, but.
Greco, can you text George to let him know he's on mute?
Go ahead, George. Go ahead, George.
I believe he's looking for the mute button.
Oh, he's looking for the, let's see his mute. Oh, wow.
Not on.
Now he's mute.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Hayford.
Okay.
Are
Next
you good
slide.
now?
Okay.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Council President, and honorable members of City Council. I would like to present the Finance Department proposed operating budget for FY 2022 on behalf of Office of Management and Budget. The department proposed budget request, which includes the general and water source funds, is $17.3 million. Next slide. The proposed general fund budget request is just over $10.4 million. This represents an increase of about $775,000 or 8% over the FY 2021 budget. Here are the various account changes. A vacant parking regulation enforcement officer was deleted for a savings of $66,860. Offsetting these savings, 5 straight-funded positions were upgraded through the appeal process in FY 2021 at a cost of $12,600. Additionally, the senior financial analyst position was upgraded to a senior financial officer position at a total cost of $6,560 to the general fund. Regular salaries rose by $56,800, largely due to a citywide 2% COLA, mandatory step increases for non-union classified employees, and annual reviews for executive and managerial employees. Next slide. Overtime decreased by $20,000 to reduce the need for staffing during the wage tax filing season. MS&E in the general fund increased a total of $785,000 or 19.4%. The total increase consists of the following. Consultants increased by $100,000 to assess the feasibility and implementation of an online wage tax filing system and to assist with the preparation of the annual financial statement. Temporary agencies decreased by $38,000 as the department will rely more on its internal resources during wage tax filing season. Parking citations commissions increased by $29,000 to cover the cost of fees associated with the paid lot digital parking permit application, validation, and enforcement system. Red light cameras increased by $89,200 to capture costs associated with the red light tickets and video enforcement program. As part of a broad initiative to increase the speed, effectiveness, and return on collection efforts, wage and head audit increased by $570,000. Out of that amount, $400,000 will pay for the services of a collection specialist, with the remaining $170,000 to pay for the services of a law firm with expertise in scarf law issues. Due to an increased number of customers using a credit card for payments, collection expense credit card fees increased by $30,000. Moving on to the water source fund, the department budget request is over $6.9 million. Next slide. This represents an increase of $23,000 or 0.3% over the FY 2021 budget. Here are the various account changes. A meter reader position funded 100% by the water source fund was added at a cost of $63,370. Next slide. Regular salaries rose by a net $62,350 or 4% due to a citywide 2% COLA and mandatory step increases for non-union classified employees. MS&E in the water source fund decreased a total of $18,000 or 0.4%. Here are some of the major funding changes that occurred. Consultant costs increased by $393,000 to assist in the replacement of the current water utility billing system. Miscellaneous charges decreased by $170,000 because the number of calls handled by the 311 call center has trended downward. To support increased sheriff sale activities, collection expense, legal and sheriff sale was increased by $30,000 due to an increased number of customers using credit card for payments. Collection expense, credit card fees increased by $20,000. Finally, indirect costs decreased by $243,000, reflecting the recent revisions of the cost allocation model provided by the Black & Veatch. This concludes my overview of the Finance Department proposed budget request, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Any questions from members of council for OMB right now? All right, Mr. Hayford, well, we appreciate you being with us this evening, and I believe you'll be staying on the line as well in case there's any additional questions.
I will.
Okay, all right. And now at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Finance Department Director Brett Taylor for a brief opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for having the opportunity to talk a little bit about the Department of Finance tonight. And thank you to the Finance Committee members and members of council who are attending this meeting this evening. I want to talk a little bit about the role of the Finance Department, and I want to give you some metrics as well. The Finance Department, if you go to the slide, thank you. The Finance Department is responsible for the overall financial management of the city. And this includes everything from financial oversight to billing, accounts payable, utility financing, parking enforcement, procurement. And part of our core mission is the overall accounting for all of the funds that come through the city. We're also the financial management system for the water utility. Our mission statement is simple. It preserve the financial integrity of the city of Wilmington through excellence in accounting services, customer service, and financial management. Next. Next slide. Thank you. We've got a couple areas that we've been focusing on over the last 2 years since I'm coming up actually on my 3rd year at the department. We want to ensure that we have a financially strong and effective city government. We want to maintain the financial integrity of the city and its related agencies through our generally accepted accounting practices. And we've been really trying to emphasize the excellent customer service through courteous engagement and ease of transactions for our customers. And we'll go into a little bit about the things that we have done over the last couple of years about that. Next. Next, thanks. The City of Wilmington Finance Department, as George said, we are requesting a $17.3 million budget this year, with 10.4 going to the general fund, 6.9 to the water sewer fund. We have a staff of 85 full-time positions, and it's comprised of 9 divisions, which are varied in terms of their activity. Next slide. Our priorities for 22 are similar to our priorities for 21, which is to provide a positive customer service experience. As you may know, that we've got a customer call center that is handling an exceptionally high volume of calls coming in. We want to ensure highly reliable accounting practices and quality control and quality assurance. We want to optimize internal collection processes and improve revenue. And then lastly, we want to take a look at improved business processes, looking at our data, cleaning it up, having excellent data management, and applying any relevant technology to help the department operate more effectively. Next slide. A couple of things that we're going to be focusing on in 22 are our enforcement programs. We're going to change things a little bit. We're really focusing on our top delinquent account liabilities. These are our biggest owers. We are refocusing our efforts in terms of our collection practices towards that. We'll talk a little bit about that when we get into some of the collections questions. Standardize how we determine the 96-hour shutoffs and sheriff sales, and provide ease of payment through payment agreements and online payment services. We want to reduce our outstanding accounts receivable year over year, which is very large. We want to make sure that we think that there's opportunities to garner more revenue without raising taxes through more efficient collection services. And we want to increase our online payment use from 25 to 50% within 2 years. The interesting thing is, under COVID-19, we have actually been seeing as high as 85% utilization of our online payment systems, simply because people are not able to come into the building. We don't know whether we can sustain that, but at least it's good news in terms of our collections process for revenues coming in. We also want to make sure that we ensure compliance to GASB rules in our accounting. And some of our core issues are making sure vendors get paid on time and to reduce the number of internal findings in our general external audit and some of our internal audits. Next slide.
Chair.
Councilmember Gray, can you reserve your question for after opening statement? We're not the question answer.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I only have 2 more slides. So top performance measures, we are monitoring our customer service. We really are trying to focus on making sure that customers get a courteous and satisfactory response when we have them call in or write in or whatnot. We're also exploring a new utility billing solution and an online wage tax filing system. We're also introducing vendor self-service. So we're doing a lot of outreach with respect to our customer service. Next slide. This is really the last slide, and I want to just emphasize 2 points. One is we went out and we looked at all the transactions that the Department of Finance does in a given year, and this is for 2020. The Department of Finance processes over 1.8 million transactions per year, and as you can see, we have broken them down. This means that the 84 people who work for us are working every day, working very hard on ensuring that transactions are made, that revenues are collected, and that we have sufficient funding coming in to help with city services. The second point I want to make is that we couldn't do this without them. They are the 84 people that work for the Department of Finance. I am exceptionally proud of them. They handle very, very difficult questions on behalf of customers day in and day out. And I think they do an excellent job. Can we do better? Yes, we can always do better. Are we looking at metrics to help us define what that means? Yes, we are. And are we examining business processes to improve things? Absolutely. We can always do better. But I do want to give a kudos to my employees who, again, come in and day out, particularly during this difficult time in COVID, to make sure that the city has the sufficient resources it needs to deliver city services. Thank you.
All right. Before we go into the question and answer, I believe Councilmember Gray had a question.
Thank you. Just because it was mentioned how many employees you have, do you have any vacant positions?
We do. That's actually going to be one of the slides. We have 3 vacant positions.
Okay, well, I think this has been brought up before, but you discussed making an effort to collect more revenue. Why haven't we, and I understand maybe it did happen in the past, linked delinquent fines to suspension of driver's license?
Actually, that is actually in place, and it has been in place for several years. The issue with that is that many times the people who are delinquent on their parking tickets, and we're going to see this through a lot of the data that we talked about tonight, have cars that they would not normally re-register because they either owe too many parking tickets and therefore cannot satisfy the registration hold. Likewise, the registration hold takes place when a car is actually registered. In many cases, a lot of those registrations are for 2, 3, and for now, for new cars, you can get up to a 7-year registration. You may not get flagged in the DMV for those registration holds unless you go into the DMV. From that standpoint, many of those cars do not end up being in the registration hold queue. They may end up selling the car. They may end up disposing of the car prior to us being able to have those individuals flagged on the DMV system.
Thank you, but I was discussing suspending their driver's license, not the car registration. And the individuals you were discussing that it wouldn't make a difference with the registration, I understand that, but having worked as a magistrate and had L&I cases, a lot of those individuals that came through in violation of their fines and fines owed were responsible citizens. They just weren't paying the city. And I think suspending their driver's license, not the car registration.
Right. My apologies for misunderstanding the question. Under state law, a parking ticket and a red light ticket is considered a civil fine, and it's tagged against the license plate number. Therefore, it's tagged against the registration. State code and in our conversations with DMV, they do not allow us to tag the driver's license for parking tickets and red light cameras.
What about L&I though? Violations and fines owed in two other departments. It's just an idea. Thank you.
All right, Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Taylor, for the new council members, I was thinking maybe it will be a good idea to share what are our main revenue streams that come through the city. Sometimes individuals in general, and this is also for the public, not just for new city council members, but for the public as well. What are the main two revenue streams that we get to pay our bills?
The main two revenue streams are wage taxes and property taxes. Wage taxes bring in about approximately $70 million. The property taxes bring in approximately, correct me if I'm wrong, 42 million. So what they do is those particular sources of funds make up the majority of the taxes coming in. Now, we do have a number of, we have head taxes, net profit taxes. We have state revenues that come in through UCC filings and whatnot, business licenses, fines, and fees.
Thank you. A follow-up real quick, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
Yes, so thank you for that information. And the reason why, again, I wanted to present that because a lot of times the public and different individuals just don't have no idea as to, how we generate our revenue and why we have to budget our dollars, because we have main areas and we have to budget within those areas. And these are some of the reasons why we apply for grants, right?
Correct.
And, to help with that, the budget. So thank you. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right. I guess we're about ready for the question and answer, Director Taylor. And before I jump into that, I just wanted to kind of preface this. Everybody knows I just like to start out the gate being up front. So I know I'm in receipt. I know many of my colleagues are. we're in receipt of correspondence from justice advocates, just questions about the parking program, ticket enforcement, towing. We certainly get that, and we hear the public. And I can tell you right now, and I don't want to speak for colleagues of mine, but I know specifically Pro Tem Cabrera and Councilmember Darby are working on convening a task force to look at the very specific issues of how we can improve parking in Wilmington. So with that said, we will delve into this issue. But again, it's a very, as Chief of Staff Washington said earlier this evening, it's something we could be here probably 6 or 7 hours just itself talking about parking, how we can improve it. There needs to be public works needs to be involved. L&I, there's a lot of players. So I'm not saying we're not going to touch it, but again, let's, we do have to pass a budget within, the next few weeks. So let's try to keep everything streamlined, and we will talk about it. But if anything we don't touch tonight, we will pick up in the task force. And I know there's wonderful leaders for that task force, and they can speak up on this subject, but they can then pick up the ball and we'll get the answers. Okay. So again, that's for members of the public. If there's questions, again, if we can't answer everything tonight, we will pick off later on this. And before we go into question and answer, just I believe Ms. McLaughlin from Finance.
Did you have your hand up?
Lois McLaughlin.
Oh, she took it down.
Oh, okay. All right. And then Vice Chair Harley, you had a question before we began?
Yes, as it relates to parking, I just want to say that there is a task force that had already gotten started and have collected a lot of data. So it would be nice if anyone that is trying to start another task force around parking to connect with the group that have already started that work. Thank you.
And Councilmember Gray.
My hand's not up again. Let me check. Maybe it's constantly up. No, I have no questions.
All right, we're just checking. I want to make sure I didn't miss you. All right, so and like I said, we will get the and Vice Chair Harley, thank you for expounding on that. This is an issue that the city has looked at before, but I believe we're looking at kind of enhancing that task force. And again, I'm not one for task forces, endless task forces, but it is an issue that has a definitely impact, revenue impact. There's obviously a practical impact. So we will address this. And my colleagues, please feel free to jump in. You're a lot more educated, possibly on the subject than I am. So please jump in. All right. And at this point, let's move to question one. All right, so let's move on to question one, Director Taylor. This is a standard question we've asked every department about the impact of COVID-19 expenses on your department. I did note, looking at the numbers, that your department was impacted greatly. So what was that impact? What was the cause of that impact? And what's the impact on fiscal year 22 that you expect related to a CARES Act funding?
Yeah, if you can advance the slides, 2 slides, please. One more. There you go. We were impacted by the COVID-19 and the CARES Act, and we were actually helped by the CARES Act funding. In the general fund, we had COVID-related employee leave of $348,000, and the PRIOs, because we had suspended ticketing for a limited time and metered parking, we had redeployed the PRIOs over to a food delivery program through the Department of Parks and Recreation. That had a cost to us from some of the PRIOs. Some of them were redirected, some of them were actually out on leave of $59,000. The COVID-related leave in the water sewer fund was about $25,000. These employees were mainly those employees who could, in fact, we worked with them in terms of looking at their family leave issues because of school-age children and of individuals that they needed to take care of. We were able to take some of that CARES Act and apply it to the costs of our operations. Likewise, during this period, we have had approximately, during the intensive period, during the last half of last year, we had about a third of the employees who were at home, who were on leave, a third that were actually working at home on a rotating schedule in a hybrid. But we've also had, on a very consistent basis, a number of employees who were in the office all the time. That was primarily on the first floor with our customer, with our central cashiering, and on the 8th floor through our wage tax accounts. The reason they were there is because there's sensitive data that they could not take home and therefore could not work remotely.
Okay. So, and I believe for fiscal year 22, do you have an anticipated impact?
Well, the employee leave program, we're probably going to be around the same numbers, depending on how long we will stay in a hybrid, to borrow something from education, in a hybrid environment. If the city decides to reopen and have these individuals come back, obviously that number will be smaller.
All right, and there's also, as a sub-part of this question, there is funding specifically for a water bill relief fund.
Yeah.
Do you have any updates on, some council members may not be aware, or even members of the public? We have,
right,
I guess, the numbers of how many people are actively engaged.
Right. What we did is we took a corpus of money from the CARES Act, $300,000, and we set it aside for a utility assistance program. We had started out as a senior low-income utility assistance program. We subsequently expanded it to a number of, to all individuals. So far, we've had 41 participants. For right now, we had a total of, 340,000, because we were using the American Water Resources contribution. It is an annual contribution that the American Water Resources Association gives us. We had a current balance right now of $285,000. So there's $285,000 available out there for individuals who feel that there is, they have a need for paying their water, sewer, and stormwater bills. Now, there are some income guidelines with respect to it, where you're looking at it being 165% of the poverty level. We have, again, 41 participants that have come through, and we're asking, if possible, for city council members to get the word out, to come and talk to us about how to resolve some of their water bills, some of these high balances.
And I wanted to follow up. I don't want to jump the gun, but I know you mentioned this at the finance committee briefly, I believe, in March. Is advertisement being utilized in the paper water bills? And also, has your department thought about coordinating with WITN, even so we can get the word out there? I mean, because I know some stuff was put out, but 41 participants seems pretty low. I mean, because I know a lot of people in all of our districts need help. Right.
We have put it into our Water Gazette. We've also done what we call a digital PSA program, where we've pushed messages out to people's mobile phones. That has yielded some success. But you are correct. One of the things that I've been remiss in doing is getting the information out on WITN and doing some more static type of advertising. Billboards are expensive. That is kind of a, one that I'm still contemplating, but we have to do a better job of getting the word out.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Gray, you had your hand up first.
My hand's not up. I lowered it. Thanks, though. Thanks for checking in.
All right.
I will ask this, though, since you checked in.
Sure.
This offering the money through the CARES Act is for water and sewer, and I was wondering why some of it wasn't devoted to people who have Delmarva bills that they can't pay, because this money's coming back to the city, so it's a good program, and it also helps us generate some revenue. But what about helping those that can't pay their gas and electric bills?
That's Chairman Johnson, may I?
Yes, please.
Yes, that's the money that came from the CDBG budget that we allocated to the various nonprofits that help with utility assistance in regards to Delmarva Power. So there are resources out there, and we funded a number of nonprofits for that very reason.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Vice Chair Harley.
I think Council President was first.
Okay. Whatever way you want to go. Council President, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. When did we get that CARES money in? When did the city receive that?
I believe we had gotten that CARES Act money in November of last year.
Okay, and since November, we've only had 41 participants. I know you said that we have to do a better job of promoting.
This I'm sorry, Mr. President. Utility relief funds only been available since the beginning of February.
So what is the plan? So we realized that we had to do better in promoting it, but I didn't hear a plan. What's the plan?
Well, we're going to continue our advertising on WITN. As I said, we're going to continue our digital PSAs out to people's cell phones. We have placed it in on our Facebook page. We have it on our website. We'll just continue to make as much of a splash as we can. One of the things that we could also anticipate is, potentially raising the threshold from 165% of poverty to a little bit of a higher threshold. What we're finding is that there's individuals that have applied that are making incomes that are a little bit higher than that, and therefore not qualifying for the program. So one of the things we're going to evaluate is whether or not we should increase the rate.
Okay, just a follow up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
What is that income threshold?
It is 165% of 65. It's about 19,000 for an individual, one individual. I'll call it up here in a minute. Let's see.
I mean, I'm looking at the numbers right now, Director Taylor. Those numbers are low. Is there any agreement now that we can raise that? Because I know it's an in-depth conversation, but we want to make sure the fund gets used. And I'm looking at the numbers on the chart, because I'm looking at the insert you have, and for a family of four, that'd be about, 30,000 gross income.
Right. Yeah, a family size of one, monthly gross income, 165% monthly gross income's $1,755, which is, $21,000. A family of four, which is generally what you go on, is $3,600 a month. That's $43,200 $236 a year. We followed what is the Delaware State Housing Authority guideline for their threshold for their senior utility assistance program. They have a similar program for seniors. We can certainly debate whether or not we would increase that.
Okay, thank you. I guess I still didn't hear a plan. You talked about what we are doing, but that's not working. So, and I guess you're not really ready to answer this question right now, but it would be nice if you could share that with council, what the plan will be, so that we can reach more of our constituents.
Be happy to.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And Councilmember Darby, I think actually I missed you in the first round. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Yes, I have a few suggestions. I think increasing the threshold might be a good idea, but also I kind of don't think that should be pushed yet if there has been no real community engagement. I think you can put it on the water bill, right? When you go online and pay your water bill, maybe a pop-up can come up. Hey, apply to Wilmington City Council, Wilmington, whatever, city's water fund. There are so many things that I can think of, and I'm not in that department, that we can do. All those community partners that got COVID money, they can easily, the clients who are getting utility assistance for electricity can easily get water. There's so many programs out here that are giving assistance to families. I don't see where the disconnect is. And I want to make it very clear, I think Councilwoman Gray did that, this money is going actually right back to the city. So this, I don't want people to think like it's great that we're helping people, but I also want people to know that this program is money for the city, pretty much, to go back. And we clearly see what part of the city is benefiting from this budget anyway. So I really recommend that you just put it on the water bill, put it online, connect the community partners that you already have. Like, it's kind of annoying that only 41 people applied.
Chairman Johnson, if I may.
Yeah. Yes, please.
So yes, the money is going back to the city, but water usage isn't free. So everybody has to pay for the use of water, including, even low-income individuals, and we try to assist them the best way that we can. I think what Director Taylor explicitly said is that he is going to make better use of WIT, and we're not doing that now, so we will do that. And a number of releases have gone out, so I would implore council members to share that with their constituents as well. Yeah, this money is for the use of actual water.
Well, may I also make this point? If you are behind on a water bill, you effectively have a lien on your property. By alleviating that lien on that property, you are in fact gaining equity on that property. So at some point, it does affect the property values in those respective for individuals and individual homeowners. So I would just say that it's a good thing to, if you are behind on your water bills, your utility bills, please call us. I mean, we have, since we've come on over the last year, we have rolled out what we think is a pretty generous payment agreement process for people to come in, have a negotiated settlement for programs for their water bills. All we have to do is get the calls to come in. And we are here to assist citizens that have a need. And, we have a lot of other options other than just the CARES Act funding, such as, reducing some of the penalties and interest, working with customers on income-based negotiated settlements. So, we're open to have those conversations with customers.
All right, Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to quickly just echo what has already been said as it relates to putting the information in the water bill, because again, we know that people are opening their envelopes to look at their water bills, and then for those of us that get our bills online, as it was already suggested, to do the pop-up, because I think those are the most effective ways to get the message out, put it right in those particular areas versus doing any billboards, etc. And even if we do decide to share it on WITN, again, those are hit or miss places, but everybody has to look at their bill to know what they owe. So I would strongly recommend that. I also want to thank the city because there were communications that went out. I know I shared it within my district about the funding that was available for those that qualify. But I do believe that we may need to increase the threshold, because if we find that we have individuals that are not meeting that criteria, if it's about helping people and you all have the data that says, hey, we only have 41 people that fell under this particular category, and you may have 50 or 60% of the people that could just be maybe $5 or $10 more or a percentage more, then I think those are measures that we could look at to improve the process, especially if the goal is to help people. And then my question is to you, are there restrictions? So for an example, if you haven't, and I heard you just say that, but I wasn't clear on if you have an outstanding water bill, does that disqualify you for the funds?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, great.
No. As a matter of fact, this whole process is to get people out from under their delinquent water bills. Okay. So we want to make sure that, again, we have a lot of people who have delinquent water bills, and this program is for them.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, Councilwoman Oliver, I see you are in attendance now. I have you noted. And I have you next for the question after Councilmember Gray.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gray, the floor is yours.
My hand's not up.
For some reason, our computer is showing your hand up. So
I just lowered it. Does it say lower now? On my computer, it says lower.
No, it's still up, but we can work with WITN on that. Okay. All right, Councilwoman Oliver, I believe the floor is yours.
Thank you for acknowledging me, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to make a statement to Brett that I have worked closely with him. I sent him an email from a constituent in the 3rd District. He told me basically what he's saying tonight. I did a Zoom call with some constituents and told them to look at their bill, had a telephone number on there, and Brett knows. I sent him an email. The lady was so thankful. She was able to call and speak to someone in his department. The young lady was able to work out something based on her income because her water bill was extremely high due to COVID. The department worked very well with her and another young lady. I got to say about 3 or 4 constituents. And with that being said, the lady even wrote a thank you note, which I sent to Brett and explained how helpful his department has been. So maybe just for me, I was able to get out that call the number and just let people know that you have an issue. Also with Delmar Power, so he's able to help me in 2 different ways. But I think with this utility bill, and a lot of people have COVID issues, I think if, I even put something on my Facebook page saying, if you needed some assistance with your water bill, look at your telephone number, just like Delmar Power does. I think the city takes a big hit on some issues, such as this. And I can't stress enough that his department has been very helpful to me. And they called, spoke to the, I think the city is doing just what everybody else is doing. Because of COVID, they're giving everybody a whole lot of opportunities to make arrangements, because one of the arrangements was basically a sheriff sale. And the city said, look, we don't want you to go to sheriff sale. And I'm not going to get in. She owed a whole bunch of money and they were able to work with her. So I'm just saying to some of my colleagues and individuals who out there are listening, because I'm always sharing this information. If you have an issue with your water bill, your taxes, don't wait until you go to sheriff sale. Call and make arrangements. So, Brett, kudos to your department. I sent you that letter from the constituent, and I sent you a letter from myself, thanking your whole department for helping out. It was quite a bit of them, but I just want to thank you again for taking the time and, working through that process and, not cutting off anybody's water and working with them based on their income, even, due to COVID. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thanks again, Brett.
Thank you for saying so. You're welcome.
Of course.
And I'd be happy to take similar calls from any of the council members with respect to constituents.
Thanks again. I'll be back in touch if they call me.
I'm sure, but that's okay.
All right, Director Taylor. I believe now we can move to question number 2. This is related to, again, this is every department has received this question. This is related to American Rescue Funds. As of today, do we have any more guidance on the use of the funds? I know it's supposed to be any day now.
So I've not received anything, Chairman Johnson, not as of yet.
And then Director Taylor, is there a wish list of items that you would like to invest in?
Well, if push came to the shove, here are the three items that I would put on my wish list. Number one, we still have an opportunity and a need to recover some of the lost revenue that we had experienced in COVID-19. And that is something that would be included in some of the plans. But number two, I would like to add more money into the utility relief program. And I guess it kind of underscores the fact that we need to step up participation. I get that, and we will do that. We will scale up our notifications to the citizens with regard to the Utility Relief Act. But I'd like to put some more money into that program. Number three, the American Rescue Act funds, as well as potential infrastructure funds that may be coming from Washington in the near future, would go a very long way to making cash expenditures for capital projects. What would happen is that if we were able to use those cash expenditures to improve infrastructure, it would allow us to borrow less and therefore lower our interest rate or our interest payments overall. Keep in mind that not only do I run programs, but I also have to put on my finance hat. And if you're looking at the solvency for the city as a whole financially, having a large debt payment every year is something that if it grows too large can become unsustainable. So putting money into infrastructure is really kind of a smart long-term idea. With that said, I think that we should, I'm certainly supportive of ideas that are coming out with regard to neighborhood stabilization efforts as well. I think that that's the same kind of responsibility that we have. So when we go into neighborhood stabilization efforts, infrastructure has got to be part of that calculation.
Councilmember Gray. Is your hand raised?
I didn't have a question, but since you keep calling on me, I can always think of something.
I'm just going by what I see on the screen.
No, I definitely agree with Mr. Taylor is saying, but it's come to my attention that we don't have a down payment settlement loan program, and you put the money into the infrastructure and you give it to the developers, but then we're not helping the taxpayer on the other end to purchase those. And for the underprivileged, that's their way to middle class, is to be able to own property. But the biggest hurdle is the down payment. So, can some money be looked at or even ask a bank or someone to donate the first chunk of money? Because it is a loan, so it's not like the city would be losing it. Eventually it would be paid back. But what about that?
It's certainly an idea, particularly in tandem with anything that the Delaware State Housing Authority is doing with respect to the same kind of settlement, down payment settlement assistance. But that would be a question that I'd have to conference with Tanny and in particular Bob Weir with respect to how we would offer that in terms of the housing affordability. Not to kick it off to Bob, but I think that he's going to have to be part of that conversation.
All right. This time, I believe we can move on to question number 3. Director Taylor, this question specifically, is, considering the city's recent decline in wage and net profit revenues due to COVID-19, he discussed the financial requirements for ensuring the proper methodologies were utilized pertaining to employees working remotely versus working from home, and that the appropriate taxes were withheld.
Sure. If you go to the next slide, I can address some of the bullets. Overall, just understand that every city that has a wage tax in the country is going through the same issue. So much so that there's actually lawsuits between states. I think it's Massachusetts and Connecticut are in a conversation about how they can charge individuals crossing state lines to go to work back and forth and the remote workplace. So everyone is looking at the litigation that might be coming as a result. Our posture was that given that wage taxes are such a substantial portion of our budget, having the due diligence was critical, and due diligence on the part of employers and due diligence on the part of employees in filing for a refund. With that said, just understand, I want to give you a little primer in terms of wage taxes and how it operates. Employers have to certify on a quarterly basis the number of employees that they have and have their taxes withheld. And employers must remit 100% of those taxes for each employee that has withholding. Also, each employer is subject to an audit review every 3 years. So our wage tax folks go out, take a look at these employers' books, and make sure that the employer has the correct documentation to justify the number of employees that they say actually work or live in the city of Wilmington. The refund request, however, the onus is on the employee, and the employee has to provide a request through a refund, which we have a form on our website with guidance, and they have to demonstrate and document the portion of time not worked in the city. Likewise, the employer, they have to submit that refund request to their employer, and that employer has to certify the calculation. What we wanted to avoid is having an employer just give a blanket certification and say, all of our employees work remotely, therefore give them their refund for their wage taxes. No, we want to make sure that the employers understand that what the employee is actually requesting in terms of refund, and that documentation is correct before it hits our office. Once it hits our office, we do a full review of the refund request to make sure that the documentation is there. The documentation includes things like some of the travel logs that employees would use, calendars that they have in terms of their work schedules, and the like. We also take that information and we cross-reference it against a state database. We have a memorandum of understanding with the state of Delaware to take a look at the state income tax database to make sure that these employees are in fact stating correctly where they live, what they are reporting in terms of their state income. That way we can cross-reference and make sure that the documentation is correct. And then, of course, I have the final decision on refunds. But I count on my EIT, my wage tax folks, to do a thorough review, and they do. And believe me, they do. They do their due diligence in terms of these refunds. If you go to the next, slide. So what we did is, for these refunds under COVID-19, the period between March 15th and June 1st, which was really the state of emergency for the governor's order to shelter in place. Effectively, everyone was sent home, and except for essential employees. And there's definitions in terms of who is essential and who isn't. Essential employees also have to document if they had been in or out of the city of Wilmington if they're making a refund request. Any period after the first that is worked outside the city at the request of the employer is also eligible for a potential refund, but the employer and the employee must document this time. Also, we went through a pretty lengthy consultation process. We had 2 administrative board meetings regarding this. We advertised it publicly. We asked for public comment. We consulted with a number of law firms and accounting firms that were representing large employers in the city. And frankly, our position on the matter had evolved. We were taking a rather, I think, conservative approach to this. And as we talked with corporations, employees, the state, we started looking at the litigation that was coming out as a result of this. We kind of eased ourselves into these eligibility requirements, such as for March 15th through June 1st, and that employees could have their employer help document the time worked outside of the office. Needless to say, we have seen an increase in the refund requests from this year to last year. Right now, as of today, for 2020, we have 836 refund requests, whereas last year we were 235. And those refund requests have totaled $1.1 million. Now, we have not given out $1.1 million in terms of actual refunds because we're still going through the documentation process. But understand that our exposure is about $1.1 million for 2020.
Okay, and is that, Director Taylor, I know obviously the tax deadline is not till May 15th, so it's a little bit of time left. Do you anticipate that number growing significantly with last-second filers, or do you believe you've caught the bulk of filers for this year?
I think that we're going to still see another wave up until the May 17th deadline. I was looking, I had pulled these numbers for last week and last Monday to this Monday, and we had gotten 120 refunds in. So I think that I'm not saying that it's going to be 120 a week, but understand that the April 15th deadline had passed with people under the assumption that they needed to file by April 15th. I think that we will see, I can't guess to say how many refunds will come in, but we will have a bit of a wave over the next 2 to 3 weeks.
So in terms of your projections right now, are you, if your projections, I don't want to make an assumption, but you're factoring in the potential, I guess, model you have based on how much of a refund request you think you'll have to process. I mean, because you're 1.8 right now, it'll possibly jump to 3. And so we're looking at being more in the hole, like what?
Well, actually it was 1.1. And in terms of what we've got refunds to date, I have worked with OMB, and we have we're showing that based on our OMB projections that we had done for the building of the budget, we had sufficiently built in a deep enough revenue drop from 2020 to 2021 to accommodate this refund request. We'll get into the, WEFAC is coming up at the end of next week. As Rob had said earlier this evening, that our wage taxes are coming in about where we want them in terms of our wage taxes. But he did have the caveat that we don't really know what's going to happen in these remaining 3 weeks. A couple other data points. Employees have up to 3 years to file a refund request. So we may be seeing COVID-19 refund requests through the next several years. However, I will say, despite the fact that our volume has increased, the refund requests that we're seeing are relatively small. They're averaging about $1,400, whereas most of our refund requests in the past have been from high net worth individuals. We're not seeing a lot of that. We're seeing just about what we would have expected from the high net worth individuals. We're seeing a lot of smaller refund requests come in. With that said, I don't think that our exposure is going to be all that great. And I think that OMB, in consultation with finance and mayor's office, has built in a sufficient baseline that has accommodated this. So not to say, I don't want to make people nervous by the fact that we're getting more volume. I'm saying that we've already addressed this in terms of making our revenue projection. And I think we're on budget in terms of the revenue projection.
Okay, and it's my understanding that one permissible use that you almost, at least has been floated out there, is that any lost revenue from this wage tax withholdings will be able to be covered by the American Rescue Funds. Is that what
That's my understanding. Again, we have to wait for the guidance to come out, Mr. Chair, but that's my understanding.
Okay, all right, thank you. Move on to, I believe we're ready to move to question 4. Director Taylor. Oh, yeah, I think we're on to question 4. Can you discuss the current vacant positions and what then the anticipated plan is, especially given that there is a hiring freeze?
We have been given the green light to go ahead and take a look at these particular vacant positions. Accounts payable supervisor, which has been open for quite some time. However, that was under a hiring freeze at the very initial parts where we were anticipating that we were going to, under COVID-19, and we were trying to constrain expenditures back then. We had put that on hold. Our plan is to take these particular vacancies, advertise them in the next 2 months, and see if we can fill them. The parking regulations enforcement officer, this is for, sorry. Okay. The individual went to fire, and we are now taking a look at to see what our capacity is in the parking enforcement area. Considering that we're not ticketing, we're going to probably sit on that one for just a little bit, so that we can decide where that particular vacancy is. Lois, is that the one we gave up? Okay.
Okay. All right.
But the accounts payable supervisor and the customer service rep are going to be posted in the next 2 months.
Okay. Excellent. Now moving on to question number 5, Director. We discussed the proposed changes to positions, upgrades, downgrades, deletion, or title changes.
Okay. Right now, we need a vacancy has come open this individual was assigned to go out and do what we call special reads. And right now, a special read is when somebody has a billing issue, a customer calls in, has a billing issue, we will deploy this individual to go out to see whether or not there's an issue with finding the meter, looking at that particular individual's account, those kind of specialized services that we provide on the billing area. Now, most of our meter shutoffs are been transferred over to Public Works. They'll go out and they'll actually look at the meter and they'll replace them if they feel that there's a dysfunctional meter. So Public Works helps us with that. These are those kinds of those instances where it's just easier for us to go out, be on the ready, go out, talk to the customer, and make a correction to their bill. We're giving up a PREO because we had a vacancy in order to accommodate this particular meter reader position. The meter reader position right now is a temporary position. We didn't have a slot. So what we decided to do was eliminate a vacancy that we had in our parking enforcement officer ranks. And we're asking for it to be filed as an FTE, as a meter reader, or a slot in the FY22 budget. As George had mentioned, we had a number of appeals for our settlement clerk and 4 of our accounts payable clerks. They were in fact doing activities that were not listed in their job description and they needed to be refreshed. So those appeals were granted and they were upgrades. The senior financial officer, we had a senior financial analyst who we were looking to upgrade that individual's position in order to handle some more high-level accounting functions. In particular, looking at some of our accounting practices to ensure that we were we wanted to eliminate a number of the findings that the external auditor had indicated in our audits, and to handle a number of the internal findings. I wanted to have a step up for this individual so that they could be really, instead of doing data analysis, actually looking at the accounting system more broadly. This particular position is going to be critical to things that we've talked about here tonight in terms of decision making, and like we would ask them to take a look at the utility accounts provision as well, a utility relief program, and see if we can make some upgrades there. So this was a really kind of a higher level position that we needed. The delinquent account agent, we had a individual who was doing special reads, much like the meter reader, but was doing water shutoffs. That individual had retired, and we want to allocate this to a delinquent account agent. We want to put this in our account services group to give us one more body to help us with our collections efforts and to be able to negotiate payment agreements for customers. The more people that we put into this, we're no longer calling them account. We should change the title. This really should be an account services agent. We're no longer calling our section delinquent accounts. We're calling it account services because our posture is that we want to be helping customers negotiate their payment agreements as opposed to just straight up collecting.
All right. Councilmember Gray has a question. The floor is yours.
My question goes back to the vacant positions. You said that there are 3 vacant positions and 1 or more have been vacant for a while. Well, how is the department using those funds, the salaries of those positions?
We don't use those funds if they are vacant. We can't really use them for any other funds, any other services within the within the department, keeping in mind that personal services, when you have a salary, stays in the personal services area. We can't transfer that necessarily down to things like contractors or some of our material supplies and equipment lines. So it stays there as a vacancy, and it gets calculated in terms of a savings on the expenditure side.
All right, thank you very much, Director. And now turning to question number 6. Can you discuss the planned use of approximately $3.2 million budget for commissions? This is a $118,000 increase over last fiscal year.
Yes, the false alarm, this is the program by which we have a contractor who looks at false alarms. These are ones that are nuisance alarms. If a false alarm goes off multiple times, we can have that individual ticketed. It's much similar to what the county is providing. There's no increase in terms of our contract for that. And that is a provision that is in city code, and therefore we need to have that company there. The parking citations and the red light cameras are both contracts under Conduit. Now, Conduit is our contractor who handles the database, managing of the ticketing information, will reconcile payments against tickets that have been written, and pushes that data out to our PRIOs through handheld devices to make sure that individuals, when a PRIO has a handheld device, writes a ticket, that ticket goes into the database. Conduit takes that ticket, posts it into our database, and then the PRIO has access to all of those records when they're walking around town looking at parking citations. Likewise, they handle the payments for parking citations. So when you call to make, or you go online to make a payment, Conduit handles the payments for us. The same is true for red light cameras. However, under the red light camera program, Conduit also manages the actual cameras, manages the data that comes through. There are all the videos that are collected as a result, and therefore has to store that information. That information is also accessible to the customer through their particular company website. So a customer can go out, if they've gotten a red light ticket, can actually see the video of them going through the red light, and we'll make a decision as to whether to pay it or not. So what you're seeing here in terms of an increase are is an annual per the contract increase of approximately 2.5% year over year to handle an inflation. It's an inflationary index as part of the contract.
Councilmember Dixon has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just had a quick question around, I know you said Conduit has the contract for the parking citations. Can you remind me, Director, when that contract came into play?
That contract came into play in 2005. At that time, it was I believe it was Xerox was the first iteration. Then they became ACS, and then they became Conduit. The 3-year contract was renewed approximately, I think it was November of 2019, and we'll be coming up on it. It's a 3-year contract. That particular contract was sent to City Council for review and approval. The issue with respect to these particular contracts is that there are very, very few contractors out there that do this particular type of work. If there was a notion as to rebidding this at some point in the future, we would be we would be receptive to that, but understand that it's going to be a very, very small pool of companies that actually do this work.
And just to follow up.
Yes, please.
And thank you for that, because I was thinking it was 2019, but I could not remember. So thank you. So originally they, because I know it was previously, I think there was something around when we previously put out for RFP again, that we did have a limited amount of people that did apply for it. So they were the ones that pretty much were, because I think there was controversy previously. I feel like, I don't know if it was Conduit or it was a different one when we were talking about the towing and booting piece of it.
That was actually under the towing and booting, and we can talk about that later.
Okay. All right. I'll hold for the other once we get there. But thank you, Director. Appreciate it.
Right.
Sure.
Vice Chair Harley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Since it was mentioned that we'll talk about the towing and the booting, I will wait, but I do know, well, my reason for bringing it up now is because we're talking about red light cameras. And I do know that there's like late penalties that are assessed, against the person on the 21st day, the 45th day, and the 90th day. And then there's a possibility that these cars can be booted and towed. So I guess my point is that, you can go from, getting $110 ticket to getting your car towed. And I guess that's a serious conversation we need to have, because it would be interesting to know how many cars get towed as a result of people getting a $100 ticket, and for whatever reason, either they move, don't know, just, not being, diligent and staying out with those types of things, can end up getting their car towed and losing their car altogether. So I'm just bringing it up because we're on the topic, but that's very valid as to what I'm saying, because if you probably know more about what I'm saying as it relates to those assessments after 21 days, 45 days, and 90 days, and what those consequences are. So I'm just saying, we're talking about red light cameras, and I know that the towing and all of that is going to come up later on. And so at some point, I think we need to look at how many cars are actually getting towed as a result of a $110 ticket. That's all I have.
All right, Director Taylor. So just moving on to the next slide, actually, may clear up some of the questions in regards to who the current contractors are, and anything else you want to expound regarding the contractors, vendors.
No, again, this is the list. I had explained this earlier in terms of Conduit. Superion is the false alarm. We do have a memorandum of understanding with the state of Delaware, up to $90,000. This is on a per ticket basis. And this gets back to Councilmember Gray's question about registration holds.
All right. Moving on to the next question, I believe that actually is it right there, right? The DMV holds. Those are the current numbers.
Correct.
Okay. So, I'm just doing the math. It looks like we're slated to exceed fiscal year 20, because we're almost at fiscal year 20 numbers right now.
That's correct.
Okay.
So if you were to extrapolate another quarter out, this is, I believe, as of March 31st. So if you were to extrapolate another 3 months onto this, you'd be just about where we are FY20.
Okay. Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you. Can we go back one slide? Director Taylor, in the conduit contract, the news article that came out recently, it mentioned a 30% basically mentioned that Conduent got a 30% cut of each ticket, yet here it says that it's a fixed rate. Was that changed?
That particular, okay, Conduit has a couple components to its contract. One component is to do the ticketing, one component is to do the red light, and then one component is to do collections. We asked them to do collections because A, they have access to our database. B, they also have access to databases across the country with the other clients that they, with their other clients. So they can do some cross-referencing, particularly on our out-of-state plates. We do not, the state of Delaware does not have a reciprocal database with other states. So we felt it was a good idea to let Conduit do that. However, keep in mind that that particular function is completely contingent on collections. We don't spend a dime unless they collect. But yes, the rate is 30%, which is standard rate for collection companies of their kind.
So are they issuing the ticket and then also helping with the collection of it? Is that right?
They're not issuing the ticket. We are issuing the ticket. All they are is a repository for the ticket once we write it.
Okay, but are they handling the appeal and then getting paid if it's not successfully appealed?
They do not. They do not negotiate for tickets. All of that resides with us. So they get a ticket. They serve as the repository. Now, what we do is we can direct them, and this is what we've done under a recent program. It was an amnesty program. Right now, the parking and red light tickets, the outstanding is about $11 million, $11.3 million. That's how much in outstanding parking tickets and red light tickets there are out there. People who are scofflaws notoriously do not pay them. The 1 year overdue is $8.2 million, $8.3 million. So what we did is we decided, let's have an amnesty program. And we would reach out to our folks, to people who have parking tickets and say, for the years 2019, 18, and 17, if you call us, make an arrangement to pay it in full, we will take away all the penalties. Okay. For those tickets, 16, 15, and 14, we would hand over to Conduit to go ahead and collect. We told them not to do any collections for any of the recent tickets. These are for the chronic 5 years and older tickets, which were substantial. To date, and let me just look at the number real quick. Under our amnesty collections, we have only collected $9,700. Amnesties for parking tickets are not, they are an idea. How effective they are is a question. We also did a digital campaign in which we pushed out our amnesty program to mobile phone users in the city of Wilmington for this particular amnesty program, and got a fairly large hit rate in terms of those advertisements, comparatively speaking with other advertisements that have gone out. And we still have only got $9,700 in terms of amnesty. Now, that is for February, March, and half of April. We want to discontinue the amnesty as of April 31st because we don't think that the amnesty program is being effective. We can extend it if we wish, if there's, some sentiment to do that. But April 31st, the amnesty is going to run out, and then we're going to have a conversation with Conduit about going after these funds on a collections basis.
Thank you. There's a lot to unpack with the parking, so I look forward to that, a focused meeting just on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Director Taylor.
And then can you just break down the number of false alarms? Anything to add there?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And I believe the next slide shows the amount of revenue collected for each of the categories.
Okay. Now, I do want to just make mention that the parking citations was budgeted for 2.2 million. By the end of the year, we're going to be about half of that. We've got another quarter to go. Maybe it's projected for 2022 is coming back if we lift the restrictions in the residential neighborhoods. But as you know, we've restricted parking tickets for limited time and metered parking for up until I think it was September of last year. We started ticketing again in the central business district and the riverfront, but we are not ticketing in the residential neighborhoods for limited time and metered parking. We are ticketing, however, in those residential neighborhoods for safety, abandoned cars, parking in driveways, and ingress and egress issues with respect to keeping the streets clear. But nonetheless, our parking citations are going to be limited this year as a result of the suspension of the ticketing and the metered parking. Red light cameras. We're actually doing well on red light cameras. We are expecting another tranche for March. I believe these reflect only up through February. My apologies, the 2.6. However, keep in mind that we're going to be probably closer to 3.3 million. I think Rob had talked about it in terms of the FY21 results. Keeping in mind that the 17 cameras that were added were in a phased approach and didn't come online all at one time in FY21. So there was a bit of a reduction in terms of the red light cameras. FY22 for the 5.4 million is going to be when we have every single one of the 43 cameras operational during that time.
This may, looking at the chart, doesn't have the amount outstanding. Is that broken down in a separate chart, or would you have to provide that to us? I just was wondering the number of the actual, I know the number is around 11 million for citations, but what about a red light? How much outstanding is out there? Do we have some quick figures on that?
It's about 50-50 of that 12. So red lights are about 6, we have an outstanding debt due on red light camera and parking of 11.4 million. I would say it's approximately roughly 5.5 for each one of those.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Cabrera, did you first?
Yes, thank you. I did have a question. Do you have a breakdown of the percentage of the parking tickets that we collect when we issue them at the $40 rate per ticket plus the penalties in comparison to the amount of tickets that we write?
Yes, we have what we call an aging report. It We get it once a month from Conduit. We'd be happy to share it. It breaks out the number of tickets written for both parking and red light separately. And it also has the age of the ticket if it's past due, from 1 month, 30, 60, 90 days, 120 days to 240 days. And then it continues to go out. We also have it broken out by year. Keep in mind that parking tickets, they sunset after 7 years. They're written off after 7 years. So we keep a list of our aging. I will tell you the majority of the 11.4 million are for parking tickets that are 4 to 7 years old. If you don't collect them in the near term, the likelihood and probability of collecting them later decreases pretty substantially. So what you'll see is, we can provide you with a chart of just what that aging looks like. But a good bit of them are very, very old tickets. And we could we'll break that out for you and we can share it.
May I follow up, Chair? I actually have a couple questions. Okay, so in lieu of that, I am looking forward to sitting down and having a more detailed conversation about our ticketing program. I have been in conversations with the mayor and a few others about reducing the cost of those tickets from $40 to $25. What I'd like to see is, and I don't know if you have the data because it's before your time and my time as a council member, to the amount of revenue that was collected when our tickets were lower. Because studies show, and I don't have the reference details, but I did do some research on this, that it's a lot easier to collect, and cities that have lower parking tickets collect more of the revenue at the lower amount than at the higher amount. I will reiterate again that Wilmington is a poor city, and there's only 3 cities across the nation, unless anybody's raised their parking tickets recently. And they are affluent cities that charge $40 for their ticketing program. So our nearby cities, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, nobody charges $40. So I do believe that we're doing ourselves an injustice in how we collect those funds. When we're trying to ask for more, we're getting less. And last but not least, I know that this is not the time to get into the details of the budget during the budget hearing, but we do want to discuss the towing, some of the revenues that came in, even though we weren't doing parking enforcements and booting. There was a lot of cars that were towed throughout the city. Were they towed for other reasons, perhaps? And then the people who couldn't afford to get them out, they lost their vehicles. And there was a huge number. Could you speak to that at all? Are you aware of that?
We are collecting data on that very issue. And we're going to be releasing the information on that very shortly. I will tell you that it's a real challenge. People simply can't get, I don't know how they make their choices. So I'm going to try not to surmise how a lot of the individuals leave their cars in impoundment for a lot of different reasons. But for the most part, sometimes the tickets that they have accumulated may be greater than, say, the value of the car. Likewise, they may not be able to, even if it wasn't, they may not be able to get out from underneath the parking citations. By the way, we have a program where if you call in to our offices, you could make a 50% deposit on the outstanding bill and have a payment agreement going forward. So, we will continue to look at options for making it affordable for people to pay their bills in general. But keep in mind that, once a car gets impounded, it becomes, we're going to have to kind of take the temperature of the citizens to determine why they leave those cars in impoundment.
Okay, one more follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
definitely a conversation that we're going to have. I know that you're looking into this. I personally know someone who had their vehicle towed and impounded, and she just couldn't afford. The vehicle was worth a lot more money than what she owed in tickets, but just not being able to come up with that money. And I know that the city is being more user friendly now, and for that I thank you, director and the mayor and those that are working on this, because I myself have often felt that our ways of getting our monies, and I understand it's a big revenue for the city, is very predatory. And I like what I'm hearing, that we're willing to work with people, and just be able, especially now in the situations that people are in, the fact that we're not ticketing, it speaks volume. And I truly, truly appreciate that. But it doesn't change the sins of the past, I guess you could say. So we really have to do an in-depth look on our practices, on how we do this, because I know that in our city towing contract, these folks are getting a lot of vehicles, and the ones that aren't picked up, they get to sell them. That's not revenue that comes back to the city. And even in spite of COVID in 2020, it appears that there were at least 3,320 vehicles towed. We don't have to speak to that now, but it's something that I'm interested in. And I am the person responsible for putting that 7-year statute of limitation on the parking fines. You can all thank me. All righty, thank you.
Good to know.
And I think one thing, Director Taylor, I know we don't want to get it too off kilter, but I guess we also, when we talk about parking, we need to look at the impact on our parking lot operators as well, both private and then public-private, because I know they've been impacted by the parking. So I guess what I'm saying is it's a balancing, because we want to encourage people to park legally, but we don't want to, discourage them from coming to the city. So I guess it's definitely a balancing act that we'll have to work out, right?
Yeah, and the other component is that there's, we want to be also cognizant of the residents and making sure that they have available parking, and for our commercial entities to make sure that they have available parking for their customers when they come in. So, it's a balancing act between the owners of the cars and the residents and the commercial customers as well. And ever since I got here, this seems to be the issue du jour. I think that coming together and having a conversation about it is the right thing to do.
Thank you very much, because I get calls all the time about Lincoln Street, and there's a lot of commercial businesses, and they talk about the parking. And so, yeah, it's a balancing act because they can't operate their businesses. People park there all day. Right. Councilmember Dixon, question or comment?
Yes, I didn't know if Councilman Harley still had a question first, but.
No, I put my hand down. Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in addition to one, I echo the comments of Councilman Cabrera. Definitely would love to be more in a conversation about the parking and towing piece in general. But I also, is for the breakout that she was asking for, I also wanted to know, like, if there's a breakout for locations as well, of where most of the tickets and where the red light camera is mostly picking up individuals at, as far as where most of our revenue is coming from per se, as well as the parking tickets.
Well, I will tell you that we finished, and we will distribute this week the red light camera parking, or red light camera annual report for FY20, which has all of the information that you need. It talks about crashes. It talks about revenue. It has a heat map of the of where the intersections, how many of the violations occurred. So you'll be able to get that. We could take a look at at a heat map for parking tickets. The difficulty with that is that I guess it was 2019, we had 45,000 tickets that were written. So it's kind of hard to maybe visually or graphically demonstrate that. So there might be an opportunity to kind of aggregate some of that data and put it into a councilmanic map. maybe that's something we can do in terms of when we get together for the conversation.
That would be great. Thank you, Director.
All right, and then I want to move to the next chart, Director, about the parking citations and OVN notices, which is the mobile license plate technology. And this also shares the amount of cars booted. Do you have anything to expound on these two charts?
I think I would like to, I think that this chart is representative of the data that we are looking at, but keep in mind that due to questions from the public, we're going to be releasing some new data. So, hopefully we can update this. I will tell you that in 2020, we stopped booting in March of 2020, and we have not resumed it. So those numbers are reflective here in terms of the FY 2021. And keep in mind that, booting is an enforcement action for us to be able to get to people relatively early in order to pay their parking tickets. It is somewhat effective in terms of people having to pay them. I'll also say for the most part, we'll look at some of the data on the aging report. People do the right thing. They pay their tickets within, the 30, 60 to 90 days. It's what we want to try to concentrate on are the ones that leave them go for too long and continue to build more and more tickets. That's where we get into the booting issue. On the red light tickets, we seem to do pretty well with red light tickets in terms of the numbers that were paid, except for this year. We're seeing year to date that the number of red light tickets is actually increased as a result of the extension of more cameras. The number that have paid is somewhat dropped off. We're a little concerned about, and we're watching that number. One of the issues that is going to come into play with red light camera in the conversation is the fact that we're seeing that speeds are actually increasing from people coming through these intersections. And it's mainly because there's less congestion on the roads as a result of less traffic coming into the city. So we're finding that the rates of speed are higher, and that is probably contributing to higher accident rates, crashes at the intersections, which you will see in the red light camera report, and in terms of actual number of tickets that are being issued at those particular intersections. So it's something that we need to take the data and we need to explore as to why this may be occurring. And we can have that conversation once you see the report.
Now, I have a quick follow-up.
I'm sorry, Chairman, if I may. One thing that hasn't been mentioned here this evening is that the locations of the red light enforcement cameras are sanctioned by the state. So we cannot just arbitrarily decide where we want to put these cameras. They are actually sanctioned by the state, and a lot of times it's recommended based on the safety data that they have. Brett, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
That is absolutely correct. We don't choose the intersections, or we may choose the intersections, but we base it on the data that is provided by Dept on the number of vehicles going through those intersections, correlated against the number of crashes that occur at those intersections. Those numbers are certified by Dept, and Dept has to approve our recommended intersections before any of this can occur. So, we simply say, well, we've got a problem with this intersection. Anecdotally, we actually make that decision based on the data that we get from the state.
The follow-up is there ever, and again, I understand it's an interplay with state players as well. Is there ever a they talk about maybe speed cameras versus static red light cameras, ones that can actually improve safety by issuing tickets for speed. I know like a lot of cities have that now. I think Washington, D.C. was probably one of the first cities to have them in a lot of places, in a sense, going up the East Coast. Is that something the city will look at, or is it authorized yet in the state?
It is not authorized yet. That is a state jurisdictional issue. State must authorize that to occur. There has been some rumblings down in Legislative Hall with respect to it. I will tell you that our cameras are speed capable. And as a matter of fact, for the red light cameras, if we see a crash, we can go back to the camera and we can take a look and see the rate of, police officers often request to see the rate of speed that the individual had gone through the particular intersection. We actually can see the actual crashes that occur as a result of going through a red light at those particular intersections and calibrate the speed.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to move also to the next slide, just the number of parking tickets issued by the PRIOs. And for those who are watching, PRIOs is the parking enforcement officers. And before we get to that, I believe Councilmember Walsh had a question. Councilmember Walsh?
Yes, I believe my question refers to both slides, the previous one and the one that we're on now. Okay. The complaints I get about parking tickets, nobody likes parking tickets, but it's the cost. And have we ever thought about reducing them to, say, $25 instead of $40? $40 for a city our size does seem like an inordinate amount of money for parking in a city our size.
Mm-hmm.
I would take that as a no.
No, we have internally had that conversation, council member. We just, again, have not issued it as a policy directive yet. And, I'll leave that up to the mayor's office, take the mayor's office direction with respect to that. But it is something that we have talked about. We recognize the same issue, but again, we'll have to have some more internal conversation regarding that.
Okay. All right, Director. Now turning to the PRIOs, parking enforcement officers, and the number of tickets. Anything to expound on there?
No, just that the parking citations have dropped pretty substantially, primarily because of the suspension of the limited time in metered parking and our enforcement in the residential areas. Mainly these tickets are for CBD and riverfront areas. We have, I do want to say, with respect to the second one, when we're running smart meters, yes, we are actively having that conversation. Park Mobile's been a success. 41% of all the metered parking revenues come through Park Mobile, so we think that it's a really excellent program. Last year, we expanded it out to every single meter. We have limited parking down at the CBD and riverfront parking enforcement due to COVID-19. With regard to the meters, we had originally last year discussed the prospect of getting more kiosks, eliminating the meters, getting kiosks out into the areas that are metered. What we're finding is that the technology is evolving, and we've had some issues with respect to kiosks. They're fairly expensive and they're fairly high maintenance. However, they're still being explored. We're trying to find a cost-effective, low maintenance way of ridding ourselves of some of the some of the, we simply have a lot of meters too that are out of service. So we want to get away from the old style meters and looking for more of a digital approach. Again, the kiosks, there are some maintenance issues. There's battery issues with them. We're still evaluating whether or not that investment is going to be worth it over the long run in terms of its useful life. So it's evolving.
Okay. And what about the digital parking permit program? You have any comments on that? And the savings to the city, if any?
It is saving the city in term, really from our standpoint, the digital parking program, if you go to the next slide, is more of a ease of application for constituents that we feel, and it's ease of administration. In terms of the cost savings, we are paying conduit for that particular program. We'd love to hear some feedback about whether or not there is ease of application for the constituents. That's what the program was intended to. But so far for the last year, I have not gotten a substantial amount of complaints with respect to it.
Okay. And then the parking amnesty program, I believe you have some figures right there.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the figure, and maybe I forgot, I thought you said it was around 9,700.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It was about 10,700.
Okay. All right. And lastly, towing. Are those? Do you have anything to discuss in terms of the current towing numbers?
Now, again, we will be issuing our, our responses to the questions outstanding right now with the booting and the towing program.
All right. Now moving on to question number 7, Director Taylor. Can you discuss approximately $1.5 million budget for sheriff sale, wage and head tax audit, and another collection expense account line? This is the increase of over $630,000 over last year's budget.
Let me just discuss overall our approach. As I had mentioned, right now, historically, the city has encumbered a pretty substantial accounts receivable. A lot of these accounts are very, very old. Right now, we have about $38.9 million in accounts receivable. These are people that owe us money. I'm sorry, that is 54.4 million in terms of the overall accounts receivable. In terms of debt due, 38.9 of it is older than 365 days. We have, not been aggressively looking at our collections areas, except for the last maybe, year and a half when we put a lot of emphasis on it. We'd like to go and place more emphasis on it again in 22, with the caveat, and I want to be clear, with the caveat that we're going to be looking at the individuals that owe us the most. And that's been part of our city stat data. We are going through the top 250 owers in the city, and we're looking at mechanisms for retrieving those funds. Now, keep in mind that given the COVID-19 environment, we have suspended all water disconnections for the last year. Water disconnections has always been kind of an enforcement action that has driven customers to come in and have that conversation with us. Water disconnections, at least on my watch, again, I want to be able to have the conversation with the individual. If the constituent would simply pick up the phone, call us, we would be happy to have the conversation about negotiating a payment agreement with them. We don't want to get to the point where there'd be water disconnection. But water disconnections are an enforcement tool that we use. Likewise, so are sheriff sales. Right now, our policy is to not take anybody who has debts less than $10,000 to sheriff sale. And our focus is going to be on the larger individuals, the individuals with larger delinquent accounts. Likewise, we have a number of commercial entities, apartment buildings and condominiums that have very large outstanding stormwater fees. With that said, we have to go into negotiated collections, negotiated settlements and collections with those particular actors so that we can start reducing down our accounts receivable. With that said, what we're doing and what I'm proposing is to increase our collections activities. One of the areas that we have not really focused on over the last several years is increasing our wage and head tax audit capabilities. Normally, we collect about $1.2 to $1.6 million a year just on wage and head tax audits, but that is from most of it's from our internal vendors. We have contracted with a vendor who is working with the state of Delaware to help us with some of the larger wage tax audits that are out there. We think that there is, and in some estimates, approximately $10 million in wage taxes that have not been thoroughly audited and collected. We think that we can, I'm not suggesting that we're going to go out and collect $10 million, but I think that there is some room to move with respect to increasing our collections in this area. The rule of thumb in general is that for every dollar that you spend in terms of collections, you should be getting at least $3 back. That is generally what we're using in terms of our revenue projections coming through. We've worked with OMB. We are suggesting that if we do increase the wage and head tax audits by the 600 or 550,000, that we should be looking at approximately $1.5 million coming in additional wage and head tax is over a period of a year. So we're really kind of pushing out this particular collection activity. With respect to some of the increases in other areas, such as sheriff sales, some of our credit card fees, as you know, we absorbed a number of our credit card fees for clients. Customers who call in and do not and pay by credit card do not bear the fee for the credit card. That was a change that we implemented, say, a year and a half ago. We will absorb the fee. We simply want people to go ahead and make their payments. We're trying to make it easy for people to make their payments. So those are my general thoughts with respect to our collections efforts.
Okay. Can you then go into delve into some detail, Director Taylor, about the vendors for this portion?
The Cover and Rossiter has been our long time accounting firm for our wage tax, head tax audit. What they do is they provide us legal guidance with respect, and they help us with when we're in negotiations with large firms in terms of the collection of past wage, head, and net profits. They focus a lot on the net profits piece of it as well, because it is a rather complex calculation that has to be made, and some of the negotiations are a little more complex. Metro Revenues Associates is the firm that I just spoke about, who works for the state. They'll help us with the discovery and audits of wage, head, and net profits taxes, lodging taxes, and business licenses. Likewise, Avenue Insights is another firm that we have contracted. We're looking at them in terms of some of the lodging taxes and business license efforts that have been, I think that is an area that has not gotten the attention that it deserves. And we're looking to increase the collections area there. I will say for the Metropolitan Revenues and the Avenue Insights, the amount of the contract at $200,000 is not what we will actually spend. That is authority for us to pay them the 30% commission on whatever they bring in. We have to guess, and we have to estimate in budget speak, the amount of money that we would have to put into the expenditure line to pay Metropolitan Revenues and Avenue Insights if they collect that money coming in. So what this does is it gives us authority up to $200,000 to pay them the contingency fee for what they collect. The other is, the other one's Voice for Impact. That's a digital advertising campaign that we brought on. We're developing numbers now, but we've noticed that digital campaigns, we did 200,000 impressions out to mobile phones. We got about a 2% response rate, and from our collections, I was just looking at the revenue coming in. We received close to $163,000 just from people seeing the notice coming in and making a payment agreement. The 200,000 impressions, we only spent $6,000 for advertising. So in terms of getting that interest coming in, and people making payments because they saw those ads, we're beginning to be able to get the data to understand the impact of this. We think it was a pretty good bet to spend $6,000 for what was in excess of $100,000 in payments coming in. The last item, Moore and Rutt, they are our sheriff sale law firm that helps us with our sheriff sales. We've seen higher activity with our sheriff sales, and of course, they get paid on the basis of what they, how many sheriff sales they process. We anticipate that number to go up as a result.
Okay. So it's the same thing where similar to Avenue Insights, the law firm is not paid unless the item is moved through sheriff sale, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, can I qualify? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
In some cases, yes. In other cases, we do have a part of the agreement where if it is, say, a small collections, it won't move to monitions, but we allow the firm to reach out to the client, and the client pays in less than, say, $1,000. We'll just charge them a flat fee because it still takes the same amount of time to do that individual as it would a little more complex sheriff sale. So there is some fixed costs in that, but for the most part, it is contingency based.
Okay. And didn't your department used to handle this in-house with an attorney? Is there a reason, I guess, why? Do you have more cost savings outsourcing this?
We are not totally outsourcing this. We still have our in-house individuals. But Moore and Rutt, we've always had legal counsel available to us on these sheriff sales. This is a continuation of a long-standing contract.
And just a question, looking at all these contractors, are any of them DBEs that you're aware of?
Of these contracts, there are no DBEs by the definition of the City of Wilmington DBE program. I will tell you, Voice for Impact that did the digital advertising is a women-owned based B corporation. You know, we are cognizant of the issues regarding the DBEs, and we are looking at that as well.
All right. Now, Councilmember Spadola has a question before we move on.
Thank you. Hello again, Director Taylor. Can you speak to how how the city will go about enacting these audits and the collection procedures without feel the business owners who are going through a tough time as it is we're not harassing them and that, we're not just squeezing blood from a stone?
These companies only move as aggressively or as leniently as we instruct them to. In some cases, there's longstanding, there's just simply longstanding properties that probably deserve to be in sheriff's sale because they are either they're longstanding, they're a nuisance property, they're a blight on the individual in the geographic area. There's some, but we will always reach out to them first to see if we can come to some negotiated agreement. We don't use this, in my shop at least, we don't use this as a way of gaining properties because simply, it's uneconomic for us to gain properties and hold them. We're not in the business of being landlords. But at the same time, we still need to collect on water that's been used, stormwater that has been cleaned, and of course, and that's really the majority of these are due to utility accounts that have gone into longstanding delinquency. Our posture here is that we would like to talk to them first, and we have made agreements with fairly large firms on rectifying a number of accounts. I won't be able, I can't share those publicly because of proprietary information with respect to those individuals. We can certainly share them individually with council members if they make an inquiry. But we have entered into these kinds of agreements, and we're willing to enter into them. Again, we throttle up and throttle back depending on just how cooperative people are with respect to settling their accounts. And our posture is that we encourage them to come in and have a conversation.
I appreciate that. That was more directed at the sheriff's sales. I'm more asking, I guess, about metropolitan revenues and how we're approaching businesses. Hey, we're doing an audit of your net profits tax, in the middle of the pandemic. How are we handling that?
To be frank, we have not deviated from our normal process with respect to our audits. We put our audits on a rotating basis every 3 years. Companies who do business with, have a head tax, a net profit tax, or a wage tax would be subject to audit that gets put on a rotating basis. And people simply get caught in that queue. We have not come off of that. We continue to pursue that. Likewise, for about 3 or 4 years, there was we did not have a reciprocal agreement with the state of Delaware on data sharing. We corrected that problem last year. We entered into a memorandum of understanding to be able to share data with the state of Delaware to somehow make it easier for us to identify people who may not and have negligently and consistently not paid head and net profit taxes and wage taxes. That was a little bit of a step up in terms of our enforcement and our audit activity. And I think that some people are probably seeing that. If you have a concern about whether or not we should be throttling up or throttling back in some of these areas, we'd like to know that. Keep in mind that the Department of Finance, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the city of Wilmington and its citizens to be able to collect taxes. And this is what we're attempting to do. I will say that, however, that we are always open to having a conversation about payment agreements and helping people if there is a true need.
Okay, thank you. I'll follow up with you, sir. Appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
All right, Councilmember Dixon, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just had 2 quick questions. One is, I know you had for collections director for business licenses as well. Is that for license that need to be renewed? Just for clarification. And then also the second question is, for the one for Morris and Rutt, is there a number per se of a number of sheriff sales they need to get to at minimum, or is there a max number? Is there a number at all?
That is an internal, I'll answer the second question first.
Okay.
Sheriff sales, it's an internal decision as to how many will go to sheriff sale. I sign the monition based on recommendations by my staff on how many are coming up through the queue. It takes approximately 4 months from start to finish to get to a sheriff sale. So when the sheriff sale notice goes out, a monition is signed and a sheriff sale notice goes out, it'll take literally 4 minutes or 4 months to get there before it actually goes to sheriff sale. We've seen it. We have had an increase in the number of sheriff sales. Sheriff sales also are contingent on the market. Right now, sheriff sales is under a very, very hot market, aggressive market. I believe the number either in February or March, it was like 39 properties went. Half of those came back before they even went to sheriff sale for payment agreements. And the remainder went and people had purchased these properties. We received approximately $202,000 as a result of these properties. It's a really delicate balancing act because there were only really two hard enforcement options for the department. One is a water shutoff and to a sheriff sale. Everything else is negotiation, delinquent notices, door hangers, those kinds of things, making people aware. Really, if you get to a sheriff sale, that means that we have attempted to reach out to you and you simply have not responded.
Mm-hmm.
So, we want to try to be as judicious as we can. We think that sheriff sales probably, we could see the market is suggesting that we could probably put more into a sheriff sale. However, we want to be cognizant that it is absolutely to borrow a phrase from Congress, the nuclear option when it comes to trying to collect. And we're sympathetic to that. So, again, it's a balancing act. But I will tell you, for Moore and Rutt, those monitions come through. We make the decision. I sign off on those that go. So, the buck stops here.
Okay. No, that's great to hear. And I know, and I will say too, Director, you've been helpful when I've asked what folks for sheriff sale pieces. So I do appreciate that. And then for the metropolitan revenues and the Avenue Insights for the business license piece, how does that work? Is that for?
That's a 30% contingency.
Okay.
So they only get paid on what they collect. But I will tell you though that we're also very judicious. Those who we hand to them is all done internally. We make the decision internally to hand those to the companies in all cases.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Taylor, so just going into some more numbers. I believe there is a chart about the return of investment for these accounts. Do you have any comments on that? I believe it's the next slide.
It is the next slide. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
As we said, one of the reasons we are looking at Avenue and Metropolitan Resources is because we think that we should have a 3-to-1 ratio in terms of collections on the ROI. We're getting better performance internally. Our internal staff does a great job. with respect to the number of collections. But we think that there are more sophisticated, more complex wage, head, and net profit tax issues out there that a professional firm, could lend more time to, and therefore we can go out and get that. So we'd like to increase, at least on the external staff, a ratio of $3 to every $1 that we spend.
All right, thank you. He also could specify the plans for doing more in-house audits. That's the next slide. There we go.
I think that it's going to be a balance. Again, working with the internal and the external audit staffs are working together. It's a small shop. I think that you're going to see increase in both of them. It's not a matter of we're just going to hand everything over to the external audit agencies. So both the internal, as a matter of fact, the more the external audit agency does will free up internal staff to help with some of the more, the more, I would say, customer friendly type of engagements, which I think that the city should be handling. We should be talking to those that are willing to come in and have those conversations. Individuals and whatnot, not necessarily the big corporations.
All right, thank you, Director Taylor. And I believe the next subsection goes over number of sheriff sales. I believe that was the question was asked a little bit earlier this evening by one of my colleagues. Do you have anything to elaborate on that?
No, just that COVID-19 we suspended sheriff sales and actually the sheriff's office suspended sheriff sales up until, gosh, I guess it was November. Well, actually it went into February where there weren't any sheriff sales. So it really kind of brought the numbers down.
I was understanding it was April 1st. Is that incorrect? I believe at a previous hearing, the date April 1st was used.
April 1st for sheriff sales when it was reinstituted?
Yes.
No, we had one in February, we had one in March. So okay. Yeah, they opened back up. Now, all April 1st, what you're thinking about probably is that they will go back to having in-house sheriff sales where people are present as opposed to video. Zoom call.
Got it. All right. I appreciate it, Director Taylor. And actually, brings us at a good, I think, break point. I know you've been on hot seat for over 2.5 hours, so I'm aware of that. So we can take a quick 10-minute break because I know some folks are in house and we have staff here, so everyone can kind of get themselves back together and continue our evening budget hearing.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to go off my headset and I'm going to talk into my computer. My headset is dying. So if you hear a change in the audio, it's because of that. Okay.
That's fine. I'll see everybody at 10 after. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Brett, are you there?
Tanny?
Yeah, excuse me, yes. Yes.
Okay. We were just waiting for Brett. Are you?
Okay, he's there.
He is here. He's just trying to get his audio straight.
Okay, his headset. Okay.
Hello?
Brett, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
It sounds faint.
I can't hear them though.
He can't hear us, but
Director Taylor, you have to change your speaker setting.
wow.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you sound a lot better.
Sorry about that. I just put my headset back on. We'll just try to get through this as quickly as we can.
No problem. No problem. It's certainly understandable. So, all right, this time I would like to reconvene the meeting and go back on the record. I believe where we left off, Director Taylor, is we were finishing on question number 7 and then going to question number 8. Can you discuss the approximately $450,000 budgeted for the miscellaneous charge account line?
Can I see the
next slide?
Yep. It is question 8. Okay. The $450,000 budgeted for miscellaneous charges. This is the cost for the Randstad third-party call center. As you know, we have initiated the call center in order to handle a large amount of calls coming in from customers as a result of numerous types of bills, utility billing. But we've also expanded it out to other city agencies, Public Works, L&I, and included as part of the 311 initiative. The $450,000 is budgeted in our budget for the Randstad contract. It has not changed since last year. We are still experiencing high call volumes. In 2020, now I do want to remark that these numbers that were provided to us by Randstad are calendar year. So in 2020, we had 42,000 calls come in. In 2021, we are right around 13,000. If you were to take those out another 3 quarters, we would be approximately 50,000 calls coming in. So we are still experiencing, 5,000 calls a month, 4,000 calls a month. The good news is that we have really reduced since the monthly billing began in July 2018. We shortly had Randstad come in. Our call wait times were exceeding 45 minutes in some cases. Now our average wait time is down to 14 seconds. This was the benefit of having a dedicated staff dealing directly with meeting customer calls. I will say that 40% of the calls that come in are just simply informational. They just have a question about their bill that they have some other questions that we can answer pretty quickly. And for the most part, it's a one-stop deal. One of the things that is an objective for me is to do something called demand management, and that is to reduce the number of calls coming into Randstad by having better information to customers before they have to make a call, which hence is why I'm asking for some things later on in the budget. New utility billing and a online wage tax system. We have some other areas that we could be looking at increasing technology, such as our settlements and move-in information and the like. So we're trying to throw some technology at it in order to reduce the calls.
And I understand that's the number of calls. Is there a breakdown between who's calling about their billing versus 311?
Yes, we have all of that we would be happy to share with you. We take a look at this as part of our city stat. So we would be happy to do that. We get it on a week-by-week basis. So I don't know how you would like me to present that, but I'd be happy to share that data with you.
Yes, that would be great if you could provide to council. And as well, Ms. Bassnight will do some follow-up with you, because I just want an idea what the breakdown was as we kind of look at ways to enhance our system. If people are getting their questions answered with billing online, or really if the calls are mainly about potholes,
Sure.
I think it's important for all of us to know. Okay. If there's no more questions on 8, I believe we're ready to move to 9. Can you discuss the approximately $900,000 budget for professional fees? This is a $465,000 increase over last fiscal year.
Okay, if you go to the next slide, there are actually 2 components to this. The first one is we have our regular integrity staffing. We keep a contract with integrity staffing in order to provide us support if we need somebody to go into customer service or go in to help out with billing. Like I said, we had a temporary meter reader and the like. So these are kind of our, this is a standard contract for us. We've asked Black & Veatch to come in and do a discovery session for billing systems. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the capital budget, but we would like to take a look this year at a completely reformed utility billing system. The billing system has not been looked at since 2006. It is a Munis-based billing system. We would like to go out and do a discovery process in which we'll look at business process, clean up our data, and then take a look at some of the business needs and financial costs, leading into a potential RFI, which will allow us to examine and go out into the business community and figure out if there's someone out there that can help us with a cleaner, more user-friendly utility bill. And then ultimately based on those decisions, decide if we're going to double down on the Munis billing system and improve it, bring in a brand new software, a utility billing software, or outsource the process. We're not wedded to any one of those. That's why we are asking for this money ahead of time, this $392,000 or $492,000 to do this discovery process. And then we have a number of financial initiatives that creep up on us, such as if we need assistance for completion of the annual financial report, we have that money available to help with audit findings and some of the audit activity. The second part, if you go to the next slide, is a discussion about the utility billing system, which I just outlined. Go to the next slide. I believe, oh, that's question 10. So question 9B is really tied to the next question, which is the capital budget. So.
Okay, all right, so let's move on to question 10. This is the proposed capital budget. I believe you have a $5.4 million request for a new billing system, and then a $1 million request for the online wage tax filing system.
These are placeholders for what may be the outcome of the discovery process for both. Oh, the one thing I had failed to mention on 9A was that we wanted to do a similar type of process that we're doing for utility billing for online wage tax filing. Right now, wage tax, net profits, and head tax is done completely by paper. Many state, locality, and local entities have gone to online filing solutions. So we have $100,000 dedicated to look at that this year. In the FY22 capital budget, we have placeholders based on Black & Veatch's recommendation of $5.4 million and $1 million to be put into the capital projects for any technical, any enterprise-wide upgrades to our computer systems to make sure that we can adopt these two systems. The reason we're putting this in here is that normally what would happen is we would allocate it in FY22 as we'd authorize it in 22, project in 22, but we wouldn't be in the market to borrow funds for this capital project until FY23. But in order to do that, we have to have the authorization in FY22. If we don't do that, then we have to wait till FY24 to get the authorization, and we wouldn't have a new utility billing system until FY25.
Just kind of jumping on that, looking at timeline, so I understand the discovery process will be conducted. If council approves, it will be approximately, I guess, a $300,000, I guess, exploration. But then where do you get the estimates of the approximately 6.4 million? Is that what Black & Veatch thinks even before they go into and do their findings? They think that's how much the system will cost, or is that being just a I guess, a safe estimate?
That is Black & Veatch's estimate, and I would say that it's very conservative and worst case. My feeling is that this number will most likely come down, particularly on the utility billing system, because the software systems I've been examining are much more agile than building a full enterprise-wide system. If we have to do a refresh of the Munis system, we may end up spending that because it is an enterprise-wide system. So again, the discovery period is really where we will figure out whether these numbers are, we're going to be ending up spending these numbers. I think that these are conservative and worst case.
Okay. So the numbers come down, then there'll be some savings. You know,
Correct.
so 44 is the outside amount you think it would be, and hopefully it's a lot less, right?
Correct. And there's a couple checkpoints. There are a couple checkpoints for city council on this. Number one, for us to go out and spend this money, we're still going to have an ordinance to borrow the money. The bond committee has to approve it. And, you know, obviously, as we go through our next budget cycle, there'll be updates on what we have spent from a capital funding standpoint. So there'll be a number of checkpoints for city council to revisit this.
Okay. All right. I just wanted a different, and if you could provide this, Director Taylor, different, at least as there's a preliminary, I guess, proposal from Black and Beach. It's just if you think that's number a little high, I'd rather us not take out more than we have to. So, you know, if it's a different estimates or proposal you could share with council office, that would be helpful, because this is obviously a big price tag. I mean, think out of any capital requests, this is probably one of the larger ones in this year's budget. So we just
Understood.
think I would just like a few more details so we could follow up on it.
I'd be happy to do that. Black and Beach has given us some of the documentation. I'll revisit it with them and send it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Director Taylor, I would like to steer your attention to question number 11. Can you discuss the planned use of approximately $280,000 in post-direct charge account line? And I just wanted to, I don't know if WIT is picking up, someone has some noise in the background, so please mute yourself if you're not asking a question. Thank you. So question 11.
Yeah, this is as you know, we send out 36,000 water bills a month. We've got 24,000 property tax bills that we send out a year. Annual business license, wage tax coupons. I mean, this is all for the postage and the mailing of. This is normal course of business for us. Mailroom Systems is our current service provider. We're always trying to examine if there's easier ways to do this. Again, that's all going to be part of the calculus under the utility billing solution discovery process that we are undergoing.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to question 12. Director, can you discuss the planned use of approximately $138,000 budget for printing and advertising?
Again, this is pretty much the course of business. We do a lot of printing. This is for like the quarterly newsletter, the monthly Gazette, some of our real estate tax billings. We also do billing reprints and mailings off to customers. We have sheriff sale reviews. Again, we have to advertise for all of our sheriff sales. We have mailers and notices. So again, this is all part of the course of business.
Director Taylor, has this price tag gone down in recent years with more people using online features, or have the costs stayed relatively flat?
It's pretty steady. Now here's an interesting wrinkle to this. It's been pretty steady. We have engaged Paymentus, who is our payment provider. We've asked them to create what we call a bill presentment function on the net, so that when you go out, you'll be able to take a look at your bills online. So we hope that some of this printing and advertising costs can be done should be more digital. I can't profess to say that I can drop this number this year, but I'm always looking for ways of getting away from all the paper. and moving to a more digital advertising, which is a lot cheaper.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to question number 13, Director, can you discuss approximate 127,000 budget for travel, memberships, and registration and training?
Yeah. We anticipate once things open up that we have a number of associations that we engage with. We anticipate that limited travel, but online conferences still cost money, trainings and workshops. I will say that one of the areas that we want to focus on is trying to get more department-wide training for customer service. And that is part of the dollar amount that 31.5 in the administration is to give department-wide, more department-wide training. We, again, I have been pushing my staff to be more customer friendly, and we're going to do that. So we want to make sure that everybody's well versed in it.
Thank you. Now turning to question number 14, Director, can you discuss the planned use of approximately 81,000 budget for overtime?
We've cut our overtime costs pretty substantially in the last 2 years, but we still have it. We often have overtime for end of the year preparation of the annual financial reports. We run, when it comes down to, these are really seasonal. Property tax billing season is in June. The central cashiering, we get peak payment period, such as when property taxes and wage taxes get filed, like we're coming up on the May 17th filing deadlines. Central cashiering, they handle all the checks that come in. We're doing more sheriff sale reviews, earned income tax, wage tax. We have tax filing season between the months of February, and now it's extended out to, the end of May. So these are kinds of, this gives us an opportunity to pull in extra people if we need, or pull in employees into overtime hours if we need them. Keep in mind that the majority of these individuals are also union employees, which we are also required to pay overtime if we have them work extra hours.
All right. Turning to question number 15, Director, can you discuss the $64,000 budget for equipment?
We had, generally speaking, we have replacement for office equipment. This is a pretty standard amount of money for us. We do have $60,000 for annual staff licensing for software usage, particularly for things like Salesforce. We use Salesforce. We've adopted Salesforce as what Salesforce does is it allows us to track customers who have engaged with the city of Wilmington on issues and track their ticket from beginning to end. We have that, we've grown in the usage of Salesforce as our staff licensing in the last year. So the $60,000 pays for that software licensing.
All right. All right, and finally turning to the department chart. Is there anything you would like to add?
Nope, just that we've got 84 dedicated employees, and they do a great job. But as you can see, we have a pretty diverse department. We do everything from property taxes, wage taxes, down to utility billing, all the accounting, all the procurement, and parking enforcement. So it is a busy department with a lot of interesting activities and a very dedicated staff.
And at this time, I would like to turn it to the public. If there's any questions or comments from members of the public. Seeing none at this time, again, members of the public know, we have a new budget website, wilmdebudget.org, if there are questions to follow up this budget hearing. And now I'd like to turn it back to members of council for any final questions or comments. Vice Chair Harley, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have a question, but I do have a comment regarding this particular budget hearing. I want to say to Director Taylor that I really appreciate the openness that you and your department are willing to approach as it relates to, as I listen to the different areas where you're trying to change the culture, you know, of your department. When you mentioned about changing the terminology from delinquent accounts to a more positive, friendlier department, all those different areas that you mentioned around being willing to being open to being more user friendlier. I made mental notes and I also jotted down those areas. And I just want to say I really appreciate that, because when residents come to the city of Wilmington, you know, to pay their bills and trying to handle their business, I think it really says a lot for the city of Wilmington as it relates to when they come and how we make them feel. So I just wanted to say thank you for those areas where y'all are trying to improve in this, and I took note of it, so thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We don't get it right all the time, but you know, we really are going to try. So thank you very much for your comments.
You're welcome.
All right. And with that, do you have any brief closing statement, Director Taylor?
No, thank you very much for the thorough discussion. We look forward to having more conversation about parking issues. And, you know, the offer is always out there to the council members that anytime you need to call, just pick up the phone, give me a call. And if you would like to have some more in-depth conversations about what we do, I'm always available to talk about things that can improve the department and improve things for citizens.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate again your time as always, Director Taylor. And with that, this concludes the Finance Department's budget hearing. And thank you and your team for taking part this evening.
Yep.
Housekeeping matter, we are running a little bit behind schedule, but I think we had some really great conversation. I think in this day and age, it's important to be transparent and for us to take the extra time to go through all these questions. So with that, we do have the IT, Information and Technology Department. I believe because we are running short on time, we'll take a brief 5-minute recess and reconvene at 8:46 to begin the IT department.